Welcome to Microsoft Tech News. My name is Joakim Åström, and I'm happy to be here representing at Data Innovation Summit this year. I'm going to talk about some new announcements we have. I work as a cloud solution architect with focus in AI, and my role is to help the customer to leverage the most out of the AI technology. Hence, some focus will be surrounding Azure, if that's okay with you. We have 20 minutes, and this is the cherry picking that I've been doing for you. And I hope this can empower you to do amazing things. I want to talk about Azure SQL Edge, which was announced at Microsoft Build. And I want to talk about Cosmos DB with its new features. And I want to talk about cognitive services, our pre-trained AI, which is getting better, and we have new services. And I want to talk about Azure Synapse Analytics, our evolution of Azure SQL Data Warehouse, and some new features here. I want to talk about machine teaching. You probably heard about machine learning, but what is machine teaching? Azure Stack Hub and Azure Arc, those are also amazing news and capabilities I want to speak about. And last but not least, I want to mention a customer use case which is surrounding AI and ties different technologies together in a nice way from Scandinavian Airlines. So let's begin. Azure, we are building the world's computer with 61 data center regions, more than any other cloud provider. And we help customers to innovate from edge to hybrid with big data and AI. And now we're building an AI supercomputer. What does this mean? This will help us tremendously for our own family of large AI models. The Microsoft Turing model is very large, which has helped us to improve many different language understanding tasks. But also, you will have one of the top 5 publicly disclosed supercomputers in the world available in Azure to train your extremely large AI models. Let's look into some more news. Azure SQL Database Edge. Here we have Azure SQL Database, but it works on Edge or in the cloud. You can have native data movement to Azure for long-term retention of data. And we have added features and functionality such as time series analytics, which is built in, streaming analytics, and built-in AI for anomaly detection, things you might want to need if you have an IoT use case. And it has extremely small footprint, and it runs on both x64 and ARM64 based architectures. Some news about Cosmos DB. You're probably familiar with Cosmos DB. It's our turnkey global distributed operational database, elastically scalable. It's multi-model. You can have a graph model or a NoSQL. It has 5 nines SLA uptimes, and you can have less than 10 millisecond latency for both reads and writes, up to the 99th percentile, if I'm not wrong. It has a guarantee of low latency, high scalability, and availability. And now also serverless. This is great. Instead of auto scale, if you don't have an activity at Cosmos DB, you won't have any cost. This is perfect for development. If you close your laptop, computer, go home for the day, you will have no charge for the Cosmos DB. So it goes down to 0 nodes instead of earlier where it kept 1 node to keep it alive. It's also great for productional burst workloads, of course. So if you have burst workloads, you have 0 cost in between the bursts. The other feature was a request from our customers where they wanted to have more granularity around recovery. And now we support point in time instead of snapshots. This means no data loss. If wrong data is loaded, or if you do accidental writes or deletion of crucial data, you can go back to the point in time where you want with a better granularity. And the data changes will be kept for 30 days. More announcements. Well, let's look at some AI and cognitive services. This is our pre-trained AI. Before this, I want to talk about Microsoft AI in general, our breakthroughs. We compared our AI in different areas such as object recognition, machine reading, and so forth. And here you see 4 areas. And in 2016, we met human parity in object recognition, meaning our AI and a human being in general scores the same at a test. And the human being scores 96% accuracy here. And the interesting thing is, if you look at the machine translation, we met human parity back in 2018. And the interesting thing, I believe, is that Humans are not great at translation. You can see the scoring is 69.9%. So what happens when our AI becomes even better than the human being in general? Well, it gets more powerful as a supportive tool. And in April 2019, we were first again compared to our competitors and match human parity in conversational Q&A. So we're constantly driving our AI to be better and better. It is evolving rapidly. And cognitive services is a package of multiple services such as translation, object recognition, speech, and so forth. And we saw growing demand in our speech services. We had use cases requests such as call center transcriptions. They want to transcribe the audio to text. They want to have speaker recognition. They want to analyze if the call was good or bad, and so forth. And other use cases such as media and entertainment or automotive, where you want to control your media equipment in your car. Maybe you want someone to read your latest email for you with a computer voice. What we did was to improve our speech services in multiple ways. We improved speech to text, where we added 27 new locales, 27 new languages, and we increased the accuracy of speech to text with 30%. That's pretty amazing. And we also added Speech Studio, as you can see here. You always have our baseline models to go from speech to text. We have a baseline model. But here in Speech Studio, you can tailor this and customize this to your needs. You can have your vocabulary, your industry-specific terminology, and you can retrain them all to get even better to have your private own version of speech to text. What we also did with our base model was from neural text to speech, the other way around, when we have computer voices.
We added 15 new voices, and the pronunciation rate was reduced by 50% for 13 languages,
enabling you to benefit from a broad range of natural sounding voices for in-control car steering or read my emails and so forth. So this is certainly something to check out for sure. It's exciting and it has a lot of good use cases. Another cognitive service is Form Recognizer, and this is an AI-driven OCR service. This means that if you have scanned PDFs, you can extract the PDF information into digital JSON files. So you can read the values and the data from the PDF, and output is a JSON file. So this is great. Instead of someone reading PDFs manually and putting them into an ERP system, you can automate this process. So if you have a lot of invoices, you can digitalize them easily. If you have receipts, we have a pre-trained model, and we also have a custom tooling where you can create your own custom model based on your type of documents. And with this, it only requires 5 documents to train on. So that's good, that's great. But what's even better is that if you have a PDF with table information, this will be kept into the JSON file. The structure of the table is kept intact in the JSON file. You will have columns and rows and so forth. So it's a great service. And another addition to the family is the acquisition of Softomotive, which is an RPA company. And this strengthened our RPA offerings, where we already had Power Automate, which can be combined with Form Recognizer to orchestrate the process of extracting and inputting this to another system also. 50 billion connected devices by 2030. That's an interesting figure. This is the expectations. 90% of the data is created the last 2 years. This is fact. And I always have heard this number, 70% of the data that we are collecting are never actually analyzed until now. Because now we have the capabilities. We have Azure Synapse Analytics, an evolution of our Azure SQL Data Warehouse, which also can analyze seamlessly with a big Azure Data Lake with unstructured data, combined with structured normalized data as we are used to, and also embedded AI on top of that. So we have these capabilities where we can use big Spark compute to analyze both big data and traditional data warehouse data and AI on top of this. But the new feature I was most excited about is Azure Synapse Link. This means that you can have live streaming without any ETL for operational databases to be analyzed directly. It enables customers to get insights from their real-time transactional data stored in their operational database with a single click. You don't need to define and set up an ETL pipeline. You have this built in the Azure Synapse Link feature. Right now, we support Azure Cosmos DB as this operational database, but in the future, we will support more database engines, such as Azure SQL DB, of course, Azure Database for PostgreSQL, for MySQL. Another interesting area is, of course, machine teaching and the Bonsai acquisition, the Bonsai product. Bonsai brings intelligence to physical systems. What it does mean is that you can teach a robot or a machine how to do a task. For instance, the Bonsai team were teaching a robotic arm to stack blocks on top of each other. And this was actually 45 times faster than Google's DeepMind. And why is this? Well, Bonsai is built on deep reinforcement learning algorithms in simulated environments. We don't need a lot of custom machine anymore. We use reinforcement learning instead. Azure Stack Hub. What's great here? Well, I was excited about the AKS feature, that AKS is available so you have a transparent move to Azure if needed, because it's the same API. So if you're using Azure Stack on premises, on a boat, or in a hospital due to regulatory or data sovereignty requirements, here you get a more transparent move and you can work with Azure Stack Hub in a connected mode or disconnected mode to Azure. And you have all the nice management tooling here in Azure Stack Hub for IaaS and PaaS. You can work with containers, VMs, Azure Marketplace, Web Apps, Azure Functions, Service Fabric, Kubernetes, and container services, even if you are on a big freighter out at sea. Besides Azure Stack Hub, we have another announcement about Azure Arc, which is a big announcement. Azure Arc means that you can have your on-premises data center or a third-party cloud vendor where you have hardware somewhere else or a cloud somewhere else, but you get a single pane of view in Azure. You have Azure as the control plane where you can manage services which you have on premises. So for instance, you can manage security, and you can also have Azure data services anywhere. You can also have Kubernetes with Azure Arc. So if you have your Kubernetes cluster on premises, you can manage everything from Azure, which is awesome. And Azure takes care of the scaling and patching and updates also. What more news do we have on the table? Well, Azure Machine Learning, this is my favorite area, of course. And responsible AI is our new big announcement where we have actually tools to enforce responsible AI, which is most often principles. And now we have tools to enforce these principles. And we have a lot of customers with machine learning scenarios and models. And I'm going to talk about Scandinavian Airlines, which created 5 models in 6 months. Among them were actually sales forecasting and fraud detection, which we're seeing here. So responsible AI, first I want to talk more about this before I go into the customer use case. The AI principles we speak about most often are these 3. We speak about privacy. And here we have the tooling now with Microsoft Seal to enforce privacy, to encrypt data, to avoid data poisoning when training a model, and to have data encrypted at inference. And we also have transparency as one of the principles. We want to have AI transparent to open up the black box of AI. And here we have Interpret ML, which we have available in Azure Machine Learning Studio. So when you have your models here, you can also look at the Interpret ML tab to see what features are important, how did it came to its conclusion, and so forth. And fairness, we want AI to be fair, to treat every group of people the same. And with Fairline, which is open source, we have this also embedded in Azure Machine Learning Studio for you to be able to see if it's fair or not, and to be able to take actions on this. About privacy in Microsoft Seal, as I mentioned, this is all about to have your data private and to have your private predictions on encrypted data. And this is available on GitHub right now, open source, check it out. Interpret ML is another feature for transparency. And this is where we come into the customer use case. Scandinavian Airlines have a global airline industry problem with fraudulent claims of their loyalty points in their loyalty programs. many airlines has a loyalty program, and here they have fraud. And SAS, they created a solution for this with Azure Machine Learning and AutoML and Interpret ML and MLOps, a full-blown solution which could identify frauds automatically, and they were able to identify 300% more frauds actually than earlier. So this is a great example of how they used both AutoML and Interpret ML. If you're going to accuse someone for fraud, you really need to know why to have good ground for it, right? And sometimes machine learning models can be like a black box, and Interpret ML opens up this black box. You can see how the model comes to its conclusion. And I have a video where SAS explains this much better themselves.
Scandinavian Airlines is the oldest airline in the Nordics. We roughly had 800 departures per day, flying roughly 30 million passengers per year. We saw an opportunity to use AI and machine learning across the company to drive efficiency and improve customer experience. When you run a loyalty program within an airline, there is a lot of fraud because our loyalty points is seen as valuable to people.
So we need an AI that can respond in real time to block these accounts or block the transactions and see the pattern. Azure Machine Learning and its capability to interpret data helped us to increase the transparency in our models. We saw that we could remove a lot of them due to them not really being relevant. In one of the models, we were basically close to predict 100% certainty if a transaction or activity was fraud and or suspicious. For us, I would say responsible AI means a lot. We need to trust the AI. And if we were to find ourselves in a situation where the wrong member is flagged and accused, that would be devastating.
Responsible ML capabilities with Azure Machine Learning helps us understand the models and make sure models are built to be accurate, fair, and secure.
And I think the explainability features available here certainly help us to see why a member, transaction, etc. is being flagged. And that creates that needed trust and bond between our staff and the AI.
Our developers have a lot of freedom within Azure Machine Learning. It's very easy for data teams to use the no-code drag-and-drop designer before moving the projects to other environments.
Azure Machine Learning and MLOps has helped us improve efficiency through automatic retraining of our models. It has given us the ability to do controlled rollouts, continuous integration, continuous development.
We use Azure Machine Learning to solve real business problems without worrying about scale. We can trust our data and models and focus directly on gaining value from the technology.
It's a great example of how you can utilize Azure Machine Learning and Interpret ML to open up the black box. What they also did at SAS, they mentioned that they were able to reduce features that wasn't that important for the model. So they reduced actually 54 features to 31. And this means that we got a benefits of a simplified model with less maintenance also and optimized performance. It also saves costs since less data to process. But most important, we get full transparency and no black box. So that's what I wanted to talk about. But there are, of course, more things that you can check out. I just wanted to end with that and say thanks for tuning in, and let's connect on LinkedIn.